Hello, welcome to the first monthly nature hike for the Rolling Plains chapter of the Texas Master Naturalist for 2021. As you can see, we're doing things virtually, so I'm going to give a short introduction on today's topic. It's going to be trees and seeds in this short video, and then you guys will have a whole week to go out in the field and find your own things to explore, find your own trees and seeds, tell us a story or take a photo, write a poem, make a drawing, whatever you want to do. And then what'll happen is you'll get a link to a Zoom meeting, and then on Saturday we'll all come together and we'll gather around the campfire, and we're going to share what we found and ask questions and discuss things. So please join us on Saturday and bring something to share. I hope you guys enjoy the video. Okay, so most of you will probably recognize this fruit. This is the fruit from honey locust, a black honey locust, Gleditsia triacanthos. They're pretty common in woodlands around here, especially near areas with a lot of water. So this is a legume, as you can tell. You'll notice they're kind of, if you zoom in, they're a little bit fuzzy. They've got an indumentum, and before they're ripe, they're kind of like a light green color. Here I've opened one up, and you can see the seeds in there. This pulp around the seeds has actually been used as a medicine by Native Americans, and it is edible. So we're going to look at the tree now. So one of the things, this has one of the darkest barks of most of the native trees I know around here. Usually a dark color with big lenticels. So here we can see we've got a very darkly colored bark, and you see all these little spots here. These are called lenticels, and they're pretty pronounced on this tree. So yeah, this is honey locust. So if you'll notice, on the other side of this creek, most of the trees have already lost their leaves. Everything's pretty brown and crispy, but you'll notice right here in the center, there's this green wispy shrub. This time of year, it's pretty distinguishable. If you see this sort of shrub, this habit that looks sort of like a salt cedar, you might think that's what it is at first, but by this time of year in January, salt cedars have already lost their leaves. And what this is poverty weed, or Baccharis neglecta. Let's see if we can get a closer look. Okay, so here we got a good specimen of poverty weed. This is Baccharis neglecta. A little bit closer, we can see here its habit. It's about 8 feet tall, so these can get quite tall. And this is in a marshy area. You can see the older growth up at the top is a little bit more browned out, or its leaves have all fallen, but we've still got some new active growth even in the dead of winter down here towards the base. Here we can see a pretty small specimen of the poverty weed, and we see it here in its favorite habitat. It loves waterways. Another interesting thing about this plant is that it's dioecious, or male and female flowers are born on separate plants, which means that the seeds are only produced on the female plants, and the male plants only provide pollen. So you will notice whenever these are in flower that there will be trees with flowers, or rather making seed, and there will be trees that just have flowers. Do you recognize these fruits? These are the soapberries. This is the fruit of the tree, Sapindus saponaria. We have the western soapberry here. The fruits can range from either being orange to a dark gray or almost black in color. Now, if we could break open one of these little orange fruits, we could see a hard black seed inside. These fruits are frequented by birds like cedar waxwings that like to eat winter berries. And if we can take a look here, we have a pretty pale bark that can often be pretty heavily ridged and ruffled. So it's not usually a very smooth bark, particularly in the older bark. These trees don't get very broad. They tend to stay a little narrower, and they can often form dense stands. So here we've got another common upland tree. We've got the sugar hackberry, Celtis levigata. Now, as you probably know, one of the most indicative signs that you're looking at hackberry is sort of like gnarl on the bark. And these gnarls tend to accumulate with each growth year, so you'll see you get these sort of striations in these gnarls in the bark that almost look like sedimentary layers in a canyon. And these can vary from being very sparse on a tree to very, very dense, kind of like the one we see here, where we've got a lot of these big gnarls, and that's dependent on the age of the tree, but also some other genetic factors as well. Another common thing you'll see on these trees are hackberry galls. I don't know, these are made by some kind of insect, but I'm not sure what kind. Sometimes they're mistaken for fruits, but the fruits of the hackberry are actually reddish in color, and sometimes you can still find them on the tree this late in the year. And so here we've got hackberry fruits. Inside is a hard seed, and these are of course really popular with a lot of birds. And this is often a bird dispersed tree. So this is hackberry, Celtis levigata. So here we have another wetland shrub. This one doesn't get very tall, but we see prominently that it's displaying its seeds right now. This is called buttonbush, or Cephalanthus occidentalis. And you'll see this is in the daisy family, the Asteraceae plant family. And we'll see that it's actually got a composite head. So when we break open this big button, we see all these little seeds that can provide winter nutrients and sustenance to a lot of different species of birds and rodents. The bark on buttonbush is a little bit messy and a little bit flaky. It almost looks like a miniature version of a willow bark. You see that this bark will flake off pretty easily, and the branching pattern tends to be a lot of parallel branches. So often the larger branches will tend to fall, and then newer branches will tend to grow upwards in search of light. So this is buttonbush. Now here we've got in front of us a pretty young specimen of Salix nigra, or the black willow. This is really common in our area among waterways. One of the main things to identify this tree in the wintertime is its red upper stems. Its young stems are going to be pretty bright red, and it'll be noticeable even from a distance. I think even the camera can pick it up, especially if we get a little closer. You'll see that these have a reddish hue, and especially from the roadside, this is easily seen. Now, one of the things when you get closer is that the bark can be deeply fissured. And even in this young tree, we can see some deep fissures in this bark. And that only increases as they mature. Now, this tree is host to a species of butterfly like the mourning cloak and the swallowtails. So this is Salix nigra. Okay, so here we can see a not uncommon trait in willows, especially older willows that have some dead limbs. Often woodpeckers will make homes in the dying branches, and here we can see a pretty good example of a woodpecker hole right there in that dead limb. And often if you hear one and you can't find it, sometimes if you can look for these holes, you'll see their little heads popping out. This is the black willow, Salix nigra. Now right here along the side of this creek, we got a pretty big stand of the native persimmon. This is Diospyros virginiana. Now how can I tell that? One of the things I've used to identify this tree in the wintertime is this distinct upper branching. You'll see on the younger stems, the upper stems, we have very few lateral branches, and the ones that occur are usually in a whorled pattern, making it look sort of like a candelabra. And if we get a little bit closer, we can see a little bit of color in the young growth. It can be either red or sort of a yellowish green color in this newer growth here. We also have some lenticels that we can see on the bark, not just the young bark, but we can also see it on the trunk as well. And the trunk is sort of a pale color with pretty distinctive lenticels or white spots. Let's see if we can get closer. Now this tree has already lost its fruit, but let's see if we can find some in some scat a little bit later on the walk, shall we? So here we can see the persimmon seeds, and they're in some scat. Looks like it might be some coyote scat. I found that the best way to get these seeds to germinate is actually to harvest them just like this, just to take them out of the scat, and I see a much higher germination rate than I do harvesting fruits from the tree. Well, this concludes the video. I hope you guys enjoyed, and maybe you learned something new about trees and seeds. I look forward to seeing what you guys have to share this Saturday. See you then.